Matikela, welcome to my YouTube channel. So today I want us to talk about something that happened in the courtroom of Judge Ratamu Kwateng. Something extremely revealing happened in the Senzumewa murder trial. Okay. And if you were watching closely, you would probably notice it too, because what unfolded was not just another moment of cross-examination. No, that's not what it was. It looked more like a prosecution struggling to keep its narrative together. That's exactly what was happening. Let's show it how it happened, or let me say, let's slow down and walk through exactly what was happening. Okay, after the court adjourned for the break, for the tea time, many people expect, not for the tea time, when they adjourned earlier that other day. Was it Thursday or Wednesday? I don't remember now. Many people expected that when proceedings resumed, the prosecutor, George Baloyi, would come back with a clear, structured strategy. Remember, the court had been dealing with cell phone photos allegedly linked to Bongani Ntanzi and him taking them while sitting in a cell, in a police holding cell somewhere in a police station in Gauteng province, right? Those photos were supposed to be crucial piece of evidence. Something strong, something clear, something that would change Ntanzi's version of events. But when court resumed, things didn't quite go that way. Instead of clear sequence, what the courtroom witness looked like a mix of evidence being shuffled around. I don't know if you guys noticed that. Then first, the prosecutor returned to the photos, then suddenly jumped back to the phone call records, then again back to the photos, almost like someone who is trying to assemble a puzzle while he's trying to assemble a puzzle while already presenting it to the court. And that is where the cracks started to show, because your case is cracking. No matter how you look at it, it has cracks. It has big cracks, and there is absolutely nothing that they can do, because Ntanzi did something very simple but very powerful. He didn't panic. He didn't get emotional. He simply said something that instantly shifted the tone of the courtroom. He told the court, I know these photos, but I dispute the dates attached to them. That single sentence created a huge legal problem. Why? Because if a witness acknowledges the photo itself but disputes the timestamp, the burden shifts back to the prosecution. Nenzani. Why ati ayizizo dates? Nenzani. Now, the prosecutor must prove what exactly he must prove what exactly where exactly the photos were taken, when they were taken, and how the dates attached to them were verified. What's going on? They must make sure all those things are making sense. Without that verification, the photo alone proves very little, okay? And that is where many courtroom watchers started noticing something strange. Instead of immediately presenting corroborating evidence for the dates, like metadata analysis, device records, or forensic confirmation, the questioning seemed to move away from the issue, because that's what Baloyi does. He will abandon something whenever Ntanzi corners him. That's what he does. We've seen him. We know how he operates. We know how he moves. He is a sneaky person. He's dishonest. His integrity is questionable in that courtroom. There's a lot that is going on. Okay. Now, The focus suddenly jumped to something else, phone calls, because now Untanzi is questioning the metadata of the pictures. Names, contacts, numbers, almost as if the prosecution was trying to rebuild the narrative on the fly. Like, do you see what is happening here? Untanzi has Ubaloyi like this. He's holding on like this. Prove what you can, but I'm telling you, you can't prove shit. That's what Untanzi has on his hands right now. Prove something, but I'm telling you, you can't prove shit. That's Ntanzi for you. And then another moment happened that caught many people's attention. The issue of Ntanzi's uncle. The prosecutor suggested that Ntanzi's uncle had contacted his phone around a certain time. But Ntanzi calmly responded that he would ask his lawyer to verify when his uncle actually passed away. Think about that for a moment, because if they are going to say Ntanzi's uncle contacted Ntanzi at a period when he passed away, because if the timeline of the call does not match the timeline of the uncle's life, then the record being relied upon becomes deeply questionable. And something interesting followed, Gesan. Instead of placing the uncle's record into evidence the way he had done with another deceased person earlier in the trial, the prosecutor moved on. Do you see his ways? No record was introduced, no clarification, just another jump to a different topic, because he's realizing, I might be in trouble. Then came the discussion about photos again, leaving the phone records again. Because specifically photos involving someone named, who was the person? Gwabini, yes. Oh, yeah, they were pictures of Gwabini now. Ntanzi made another clear point. He said he only knew of 2 photos where he appears with Gwabini, and they are like this in those pictures. There is no Gwabini alone in his phone. Now, according to him, there is no photo of Gwabini alone in that set, okay? So Ubaloyi must not dare come with stories here. Again, this created another problem, because if the prosecution is trying to establish a timeline using photos, they must be able to clearly demonstrate who is in the image, where it was taken, and when it was taken. And they are struggling. They are struggling. Without that, the evidentiary value becomes extremely limited. Also, you must remember that Gwabini told us when he was when he came to court to do his evidence, to give his testimony, he was arrested before Ntanzi. They took his phone. He never got it back. He never got that phone back. Without now making any speculations, if you link Gwabini's phone not be given back, and Ntanzi's phone after Gwabini's arrest, and now pictures of Gwabini, and Ntanzi says, "No, I do not have a picture of Gwabini alone. I have a picture of Gwabini where we are standing like this." Do you understand what that means? Now, without that, the evidentiary value becomes extremely limited. But another question continued. Another moment came when the prosecutor asked the question involving 2 different people in one sentence, a friend and Umjiako. I was like, what's going on now? Ntanzi answered about the friend, but not about Umjiako. And this is where the courtroom observers expect something interesting when the trial comes back again, because Ntanzi may return to that point and say something very important. I did not finish answer that question. I want to answer. They went on tea time, I think, yes, or on lunchtime, I'm not sure. If he does that, he could bring the discussion right back to a name that had already caused tension in the trial, okay? Because now another name that is problematic in that trial is Mabena's name. Because Ntanzi previously explained that he recognized Mabena's number because it appeared between his mother's number and his girlfriend's number in his contacts, which raises a logical question. If the prosecution knew about that number, why was it never directly put to him earlier? Why only now? Why does the witness himself appear to be raising the issue first? That is the kind of moment that can change the entire direction of cross-examination, because cross-examination works best when the prosecutor controls the narrative. But when the witness starts exposing gaps, suddenly the courtroom dynamic shifts, and it looks like Ntanzi is the one that has the power right now. And that is exactly what some of us who are watching here feel is happening. Instead of tightly constructed line of questioning, what the court saw looked more like pieces of evidence being introduced without a complete framework behind them. Photos with disputed dates, phone calls with uncertain timelines, contacts that were never fully explored, and each time a difficult question appeared, the discussion seemed to move somewhere else. Now, to be fair, trials are complex, right? Evidence is often introduced gradually, and prosecutors sometimes reveal their strategies later. But in a high-profile cases like the murder of Senzo Meyiwa, who was a soccer star, every moment in court is watched closely, and every inconsistency is examined, which is why this moment has already started sparking debate among trial watchers or followers. Was this simply a normal courtroom exchange, or was it a sign that the prosecutor's evidence is not as solid as it first seemed like, as they first introduced it? It's not. That is the question many viewers now are asking, because in court, evidence is not about suggestion. It is about proof. Dates must match, records must align, and timelines must make sense. And if they don't, the defense only needs to introduce reasonable doubt. And reasonable doubt is the one thing that can change everything in a criminal trial. For now, the court has nothing from Balui's side. Has absolutely nothing. It's just so bad. They will come back. They have adjourned, right? But when proceedings resumes, all eyes will be on whether these questions get answered. Will the prosecution return with stronger verification of photos? Will the call records be clarified? And will the unresolved names and numbers finally be explained? Because one thing is certain. The next session of this trial may determine whether these pieces of evidence strengthen the state's case or begin to unravel it. And in a case that has already gripped South Africa for more than a decade, every moment of it matters. I don't know about you, but I feel like Baloyi has lost control of the case. What are your thoughts when it comes to that? Let's talk comment section. I want to hear your views. Thank you so much. Do enjoy your day. Bye-bye.